why is he comparing it? Trump is not taking a plea deal. If Petraeus would have fought this in court, if this Berger guy would have fought it in court, they would have gotten destroyed.
PolitiFact rates that as a lie, so she absolutely lied.
I'm so curious. I'm not curious. I'm just gonna assume this and be an asshole. Maybe I'm wrong. I wonder how much Glenn Greenwald has been part of the new age of like conservative apologists that constantly on fact checkers that say, oh, the fact checkers, they're all biased. All the fact checkers are biased. I wonder if Glenn Greenwald has ever said that. But he'll cite it when it fact checking, like virtually everything the corporate media does to feign superiority, is a total scam. Just another way for them to smuggle their own ideologically driven disinformation and conspiracy theories under a more elevated facade. PolitiFact. Why the f*** are you putting them in your video then?
Saying, look, if you break the law, you should go to jail, you should be prosecuted. And the fact that other people break the law and aren't prosecuted makes no difference. But that is not how the law works. In every other instance, you can argue that whataboutism doesn't matter. So you say, oh, Russia committed a war crime because they used this certain weapon here, cluster bombs or whatever, and then someone comes along and says, well, the United States uses those weapons, and Ukraine uses those weapons, and the UK uses the weapon, and Israel uses those weapons. And then the response is, oh, that's whataboutism. Who cares if other people do it too? If Russia does it, it's wrong. And that's the kind of argument being marshaled here. Who cares if everybody in Washington constantly leaks information, classified information? The fact that President Trump did it means he should be prosecuted, but that is not how the law works. The law is an extremely potent weapon. It can put you in a cage. It can deprive you of your liberty. It can seize your assets. It can even, in some cases, take your life. And so in order for the law to be accepted in a society that the government has the power through force to come and take you and put you in a cage, it needs to have credibility as a law. It needs to be something other than just a brute weapon that's used against political enemies. And the only way to ensure that the law has credibility is if it's applied consistently and universally and not selectively. That's why in law...
Why wouldn't he send in the military on January 6th if he was that power hungry? That's the only hole in your theory. Otherwise, I'm 100% on board. Doesn't that further my theory? Because if he really thought the election was stolen, why wouldn't he send in the military, right? The reason why he doesn't is because he's intelligent. He works plausible deniability, right? Like you heard him even on that call. He's like, oh, like, you know, I'm not saying that you need to do this. I'm just saying that people are going to be mad, you know? Oh, I'm not saying about this, but I just mean like, you know, there's probably something here that you're like, he seems like he's not totally fucking retarded most of the time, right? Oh, we don't need the specific names of these people, you know, just like, you know, have them, you know.
Precedent is everything. How the law has been applied in other similar cases always guides how we view the law in this case. And the fact that, as we're about to show you, so many people who were on the side of the establishment, who were judged politically favorably by the establishment, who did exactly what President Trump is accused of done, but far worse, the fact that they were given slaps on the wrist or never even prosecuted, of course sheds enormous light on the motives at play here, and therefore on the validity of the prosecution. Now, the final point I want to make before going into these historical examples is one of the laws that has been invoked as the basis for these charges against President Trump is the Espionage Act of 1917. And for those who didn't see it, we devoted last night's show, before we knew President Trump had been indicted under this law, in the context of the ongoing attempt to extradite Julian Assange to stand trial in the United States, we devoted the show to how this Espionage Act of 1917 is one of the most repressive and unjust laws in the U.S. Code. And I won't repeat that here now just because the context is President Trump, but I would encourage you, if you haven't already watched it, to go back and watch the show we did last night where we went into detail on the history of that law and the reasons why it gives the government obscene amounts of power that, as it turns out, they're using here. Now, as I said, the two other counts are not about President Trump's taking classified information, but are about his alleged obstruction of the investigation into this. And that's so often what happened in the Mueller investigation. They would investigate somebody, they wouldn't find a crime, but they would turn the person into criminals during the investigation. That's how they convicted Michael Flynn and got him to plead guilty, and Roger Stone, and so many others. So my guess is President Trump looked at this prosecution with great hostility, and that probably led him to be pretty hostile to the investigators, and then now turned that into an obstruction charge. We'll have to see what the evidence shows about whether he did that, but the focus, the bulk of the indictment, the reason why the investigation exists in the first place is the allegation that he mishandled classified information. Now, let me just read a couple articles to you to detail the facts of that.
Okay. Let's see how he represents these. The bulk is that he mishandled classified information. Kind of. But not if, when you say mishandled, not that he just accidentally took it, but he was literally moving the fucking shit all over his fucking house, telling people, in opposition to his lawyers, telling that Nwata guy, what the fuck is his name, Nwata or whatever, or Nwata, telling Nwata to listen, before the other lawyers get there, I need you to take these boxes and run into my fucking house, okay? Calling him multiple times to check on what's going on, instructing his lawyers and his employees to lie and delete footage. Bro, it's so much more than just the main rhetorical trick that Greenwald uses is to do super reductionist takes. Yes, clearly. I wonder if he's even read the indictments. Those indictments legitimately would probably take you 20 minutes to read. If I wasn't doing it on a stream, it'd probably be 20 minutes. It's not even that.
About the indictment, we'll start with lawfare that gives a pretty straightforward description of the...
Oh, okay, he's going to go through the indictment.
Trump indicted in Mar-a-Lago probe. The article says a grand jury in South Florida...
Oh, he's going through an article of the indictment. Remember, I hope I've demonstrated at least one thing to you guys on stream. Most of like the... People say like legalese or whatever. That might be true in like contracts or really heavy corporate stuff. But when it comes to indictments, we've been able to read all of these. They're not really that complicated. You're not going to find like crazy Latin or crazy, like most indictments are going to be readable unless it's some, maybe like a crazy patent, like insanely technical, blah, 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 maybe. But like most indictments we read are, I don't even know if patent shit would be indictment. But like I'm just saying, like most indictments are pretty easy to read. You don't need to read an article about it. Just read the indictment yourself.
Has reportedly indicted former President Donald Trump in connection with the Mar-a-Lago documents investigation. The indictment is under seal. That was then, but it's not now. But it apparently includes 7 counts involving improper retention of classified material and conspiracy to obstruct the special counsel investigation. In terms of substance, all we know about the indictment is that it is believed to consist of several charges, all related.
Like, why are you reading an old article when the indictment is unsealed? But okay, maybe he's...
the classified documents investigation arising out of Mar-a-Lago, not the January 6th or any other matter within the special counsel purview. They reported to include, quote, willful retention of national defense information, corruptly concealing documents, conspiracy to obstruct justice, and false statements. And then they go on to say why they think it's justified, because this is lawfare, a deeply anti-Trump blog. Now, again, they were saying this at the time before the indictment was released. We've now read the indictment, and the description we gave you of it is a more accurate one than the rest of that article. Now, let's look at a few prior cases where these kinds of examples have been treated. And let's start with the one I mentioned, which is the leak by former President Obama's former CIA director, David Petraeus, of what were called the crown jewels of the U.S. security state, the most sensitive documents that the government has in its possession. And he gave them to his mistress.
Petraeus pleads guilty. Let's see what this case was actually about. He didn't even read the article? Yeah, let's see. April 23rd, 2015, Petraeus pleaded guilty in Charlotte. A statement of facts in the Petraeus case. Oh, I'm reading this in my head, sorry. Okay. Classified information, we already know this. DOD, we don't need this. CIA, we don't need this. Criminal conduct, okay. Petraeus. Mihatch, thanks for subbing, buddy. The black books contain national defense information, like top secret SCI and code word information. By the way, where are your black books? We never went through. They're in a rucksack up there somewhere. Okay, are you avoiding that? Are you going to look through them first? Well, they're really, I mean, they're highly classified, some of them. They don't have it on it, but I mean, there's code word stuff in there. Oh, and he was going to give the black books to his biographer. Oof. The man wanted a bestseller and he was going to do anything to... Yeah, Jesus Christ. Let's see. The FBI executed a warrant. They seized it. Oh, he signed a security exit form. I give my assurance there's no classified material in my possession, custody, or control at this time. And he still had the black books. I wonder how the FBI got a search warrant for his house, or what led to that. Petraeus lied. He said he didn't provide any classified information to his biographer, and he'd never facilitated the provision of classified information to his biographer. These statements were false. Damn. Damn, and he got a crime level of 8, base level 6, abuse of position of trust +2, obstruction of justice +2, and acceptance of responsibility -2. What does that mean? Damn. He pled guilty in Charlotte. The judge upped the fine to $100,000. And 2 years probation. There was a mistress involved. Oh, an affair with Broadwell. Damn. The mistress is the biographer, yeah. Okay, what's the point of bringing up Petraeus then?
The woman with whom he was having an extramarital affair because she was writing a book on him, and he wanted her to be able to write a book that was extremely adoring, and gave her those documents for that reason. Here we see from the Los Angeles Times, when he pled guilty, quote, David H. Petraeus, the former CIA director and retired 4-star Army general, admitted Tuesday that he gave 8 handwritten journals containing highly classified information about secret operations and identities of covert officers to his mistress in 2011 and lied about it to the FBI. So there you have a case where the documents in this one instance were really the kind of documents they always warn about, containing the names of covert officers overseas and secret covert operations that were being undertaken. And he gave it to her. She had no ability to keep them secure, and the idea was to let her write a book. And then he lied about it to the FBI. What happened? Quote, Petraeus pleaded guilty to 1 misdemeanor count of retaining classified information. Prosecutors agreed not to charge him with more serious crimes such as obstruction of justice and lying to the FBI, the DOJ announced. Petraeus agreed to pay a $40,000 fine, and prosecutors said they would recommend that he receive probation instead of prison time. Petraeus ran the CIA for only 14 months before he was forced to step down after admitting to an illicit affair with his biographer, Paula Broadwell. The FBI had uncovered the affair while investigating allegedly threatening emails that Broadwell had sent to a Florida socialite who was friends with Petraeus and his wife. 2 weeks before the scandal broke, Petraeus was interviewed by 2 FBI agents who said they were investigating allegations of security breaches. In that meeting, according to court documents released Tuesday, Petraeus told the agents he had never given classified information to Broadwell. But according to court papers, Petraeus had given her 5 by 8 inch bound notebooks that contain notes from official and unofficial meetings and briefings while he was in Afghanistan. The journals contain classified information regarding the identity of covert intelligence officers, war strategy, intelligence capability, diplomatic discussions, quotes from and delivered.
I don't understand what is the point of what he's saying, that he thinks that they should have charged Petraeus with more. I mean, Petraeus pled guilty and he didn't fight any of this in court. I don't know what the
discussions with high-level National Security Council meetings and Petraeus' private meetings with President Obama, according to court documents. Petraeus did not give the books to his official military historian as required, but kept them in his home. On August 4th, 2011, a month before he was to take over the CIA...
He's going through so many details of this Petraeus case, okay? Which he has every right to do. And by details of the case, I mean he's going through a news article about the case instead of reading the indictment, which is fine. Well, I guess the indictment isn't going to contain all the charges because he's saying that, so it's fine, it's fine. Do you think he's going to read a single word of the Trump indictment? Or a single thing about what kind of documents were in Trump's house? Do you think he's going to talk at all about what kind of documents were in Trump's house? Or is he only going to fixate on these prior cases?
I'll ask, quote, by the way, where are your black books? According to a recording she made interviewing him, the court paper said Petraeus told her they were, quote, in a rucksack somewhere, but that the contents were, quote, highly classified. So he didn't spend a day in prison. They ended up...
Trump hasn't spent a day in prison, but...
charging him with misdemeanor counts, 1 misdemeanor count. He ended up getting a job at Harvard. He became the global chairman of the KKR Global Investment Bank, made tens of millions of dollars, and is still treated now as one of the wise old men of Washington, even though his leak was infinitely more severe than almost any other leak, certainly...
How do you know that?
...by Edward Snowden, by Chelsea Manning, by almost anyone who has been sent to prison for years the way they want to do to President Trump. Now, this is the selectivity, the political game playing that they do with this law that makes its entire existence and application so inherently suspect. Now, there's another case that many of you may have forgotten about. It took place in the 1990s during the Clinton years. where the national security advisor to President Clinton, Sandy Berger, went to a room where very sensitive materials were kept and he stole them. He stuffed them in his pants with the malicious intent to remove them and prevent investigators from discovering them. Here from NBC News, 2006, agency says ex-Clinton aide took classified documents. Quote, President Clinton's national security advisor removed classified documents from the National Archives, hid them under a construction trailer, and later tried to find the trash collector to retrieve them, the agency's internal watchdog said Wednesday. The report was issued more than a year after Sandy Berger pleaded guilty and received a criminal sentence for removing the documents.
Wait, is this who we're looking at? Oh no, Samuel L. Berger. National Security Advisor to President Bill Clinton has agreed to plead guilty to a misdemeanor charge and give up security clearance for 3 years for removing classified material from government archive. Certificate of foreign policy circles for years. Berger has also agreed to pay a $10,000 fine as part of an agreement reached recently with the Justice Department after months of quiet negotiations. He is expected to enter his plea on Friday in U.S. District Court here, capping an embarrassing episode that reverberated in last year's presidential campaign. Mr. Berger was a senior policy advisor to Senator John Kerry. Okay, so there's another one where he pled guilty. Does it say for like Petraeus? Was this guy like oh, it says he was a Republican before 2002 and then an independent since 2002. Huh, okay.
Berger took the documents in the fall of 2003 while working to prepare himself and Clinton administration witnesses for testimony to the September 11th commission. Berger was authorized as the Clinton administration's representative to make sure the commission got the correct classified materials. He pleaded guilty to unlawfully removing and retaining classified information. He was fined $50,000, ordered to perform 100 hours of community service, and was barred from access to classified material for 3 years. Inspector General Paul Brackfeld reported that National Archives employees spotted Berger bending down and fiddling something white around his ankles. The employees did not feel at the time there was enough information to confront someone of Berger's statue, the report said. Later, when Berger was confronted by archive officials about the missing documents, he lied by saying he did not take them, the report said. Brackfield's report included an investigator's note taken during an interview with Berger. The note dramatically described Berger's removal of documents from an October 2nd, 2003 visit to the archives. Berger took a break to go outside with an escort while it was dark. He had taken 4 documents in his pockets. He headed toward a construction area. Mr. Berger looked up and slid the documents under a construction. Quote, he was aware, after the staff would notice, of earlier suspicions from previous visits that he was rude. This official called Berger to discuss missing documents from his visit. Said that Berger had, quote, destroyed, cut into small pieces, 3 or 4 of the documents. These were put into the trash. After the trash had been picked up, Berger, quote, tried to find the trash collector, but had no luck, the note said. Now, another person who never went to prison, was not convicted of a felony, got a fine, and yet he was deliberately stealing documents to prevent them from being discovered as part of the...
These people all pled. These people all took plea deals. Why is he comparing it? Trump is not taking a plea deal. If Petraeus would have fought this in court, if this Berger guy would have fought it in court, they would have gotten destroyed. Does he think if Petraeus would have fought this in court, he would have gotten the same fine? Or if this guy would have fought this in court, he would have gotten the same punishment? Like...
The 9/11 Commission, looking into how 9/11 happened. Remember, 9/11 happened 9 months after the end of the Clinton administration. And here you had the National Security Advisor for Bill Clinton repeatedly stuffing into his pants, stealing extremely sensitive documents from the National Archive to prevent investigators from discovering it. We never really learned what those documents would have revealed or what his motive was, but obviously his motive was malicious. He didn't go and get convicted of any felony. He never spent a day in jail. He was a good friend of the Clintons. He got basically off scot-free. Now, perhaps the most analogous case is Hillary Clinton.
Oh, the emails. It's going to be the emails.
Like David Petraeus, unlike Sandy Berger, there's no allegation that Donald Trump maliciously stole these documents with any ill motive.
Wait, hold on. I don't think there was any allegations that Petraeus or the other guy did I miss something for the Berger? That they stole it of ill motive to give to like enemies of the state. That didn't even sound like any of the things. It sounded like for Petraeus, he gave it to that woman for his fucking biography, which was retarded and stupid and immoral and illegal. And the other guy, I don't know, was he bragging to show it off to the escort or what? What was his motivation? I'm not going to cut out on this. I'm sorry. That's not even true. The argument for Trump is actually way more strong that Trump is doing it for a malicious motive. Trump was overseeing the transfer of documents from the White House to Mar-a-Lago. Once they were in Mar-a-Lago, he had specific control of them and ordered them to be moved to certain places. He had a worker go through them and look for certain things to retrieve from Mar-a-Lago, knowing the FBI was looking for them. He instructed his employees and his lawyers to lie to the FBI about returning shit, and then he packed those documents in a fucking plane and flew them to however far north they went for a vacation, just in north for the summer. And we know that he was showing these to people for political gain, right? Now, Petraeus was wrong, and Petraeus should not have been showing those black books to anybody, but at least from what the FBI seems to allege, it was for his biographer to write a good biography, and none of that classified material showed up in the book. Now, you could argue that it's for political gain or financial gain to make the book better. Sure, that's fair. But Trump is literally showing these to people, saying like, look at how politically impugned I was. This was actually Millie. This was Millie. This was his plan. This wasn't my plan. This was his plan. Like literally for direct political gain.
Petraeus, unlike Sandy Berger, there's no allegation that Donald Trump maliciously stole these documents with any ill motive. He didn't expose the names of covert agents. At best, as I said before, it was a bureaucratic oversight.
Bro, I can't do it. I'm not going to be able to. I'm not going to have my cool. I'm just going to lose it. I am going to lose it. I have to find, is it Xanax? We need to go full Trump. I need to, or not full House. I need to find out what drugs I need to take to fucking sedate the fuck out of me, because I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to lose my mind talking to this guy.
Expose the names of covert agents. At best, as I said before, it was a bureaucratic oversight. And
he's not being charged for a bureaucratic oversight, Glenn. That's not in any of the indictments anywhere. Is a bureaucratic oversight. That's not what is alleged in any part of the indictment.
Was the claim ultimately made about Hillary Clinton that she, when she set up a private server, an email server at her home, in which she received passed through that classified information, even though it was unprotected, the claim from James Comey was, even though what she did was wrong and careless and reckless, she didn't have the requisite criminal intent necessary to prosecute her, and so they didn't. Now,
what does that mean, Glenn?
You may recall that Hillary Clinton lied repeatedly about what happened here. In fact, here's a PolitiFact rating from July of 2016, and you know PolitiFact would not be calling her a liar just a few months before the election unless there was extremely compelling reason to do so. She had denied, as you see there, that she had ever received or sent any material that was marked classified information on her private email server while Secretary of State. That was an absolute lie. There was classified material found passing through that private server, and therefore PolitiFact rates that as a lie. So she absolutely lied. But
I believe that the explanation for Hillary, I don't remember who else corroborated this, but I think it's like, I don't think anybody contests this. I think the issue that Hillary, at least she claimed to have had, is that you might have like an email and it's blah, 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 blah. And supposedly at the top of an email, you might get something like this. And this C means that it's confidential. And I think her claim at the time was sometimes you miss those. Now, if you're literally the head of the Secretary of State, you should know what a classified marking looks like. I don't remember there was another reason given why they might have missed those confidentiality markings. But again, the onus is on, and it should be, the onus is on the Department of Justice, the FBI, our prosecutorial bodies to prove that there was criminal intent. That's what's happened in the Trump indictments. They weren't able to satisfy that with the Hillary ones.
July of 2016, FBI Director Jim Comey, who, let us remember, was just accused by a very well-regarded prosecutor, John Durham, who, let us remember, absolutely lied. Passing through that private server, and then Secretary of State, that was an absolute lie. Or sent any minutes before the election unless there was extremely compelling reason to do so. She had denied, as you see there, that she had ever received or sent any material that was marked classified information on her private email server while Secretary of State. That was an absolute lie. There was classified material found passing through that private server, and therefore PolitiFact rates that as a lie. So she absolutely lied.
I'm so curious. I'm not curious. I'm just going to assume this and be an asshole. Maybe I'm wrong. I wonder how much Glenn Greenwald has been part of the new age of like conservative apologists that constantly on fact checkers that say, oh, the fact checkers, they're all biased. All the fact checkers are biased. I wonder if Glenn Greenwald has ever said that. But he'll cite it when it The Washington Post fact checker P-Bum continues to classify the Biden laptop as a conspiracy theory even after a new book from Politico's Shrek Reports proves the key emails are real. The actual conspiracy theory is the media and CIA's lie that it was Russian disinformation. This entire fact check reads like a DNC press release. Like the anti-information industry, this new media title, Fact Checker, is a huge fraud designed to disguise liberal media activism as something more elevated, noble, and trustworthy, like they're neutral or whatever. If you believed that in 2021, why the fuck in 2023 are you citing a fact checker when they agree with you? Shouldn't you just go to some other body? Shouldn't you do your own homework? Shouldn't you research, like, you could even start with the PolitiFact thing and just go and research her statement and then show that it's false. Why would you ever post this after saying the whole industry is a sham? Fact-checking, like virtually everything the corporate media does to feign superiority, is a total scam. Just another way for them to smuggle their own ideologically driven disinformation and conspiracy theories under a more elevated facade. PolitiFact. Why the fuck are you putting them in your video then?
But in July of 2016, FBI Director Jim Comey, who, let us remember, was just accused by a very well-regarded Sandy Berger. There's no allegation oversight. And that was the claim ultimately made about Hillary Clinton, that she, when she set up a private server, an email server at her home, in which she received passed through that classified information, even though it was unprotected, the claim from James Comey was, even though what she did was wrong and careless and reckless, she didn't have the requisite criminal intent necessary to prosecute her, and so they didn't. Now, you may recall that Hillary Clinton lied repeatedly about what happened here. In fact, here's a PolitiFact rating from July of 2016, and you know PolitiFact would not be calling her a liar just a few months before the election unless there was extremely compelling reason to do so. She had denied, as you see there, that she had ever received or sent any material that was marked classified information on her private email server while Secretary of State. That was an absolute lie. There was classified material found passing through that private server, and therefore PolitiFact rates that as a lie. So she absolutely lied. But in July of 2016, FBI Director Jim Comey, who, let us remember, was just accused by a very well-regarded prosecutor, John Durham.
Wait, did he say that? Did he say she lied to investigators? I didn't hear that. If he said it, I listened to saying that. I didn't hear.
Remember, was just accused by a very well-regarded prosecutor, John Durham, in a 302-page report that he filed after a years-long investigation, that the FBI under James Comey in mid-2016 opened in a criminal investigation that became Russiagate into Trump and Russia collusion, even though there was nowhere near an evidentiary basis that would have justified the opening of a criminal investigation by the FBI. Comey did.
Wait, why do we think that there was nowhere near an evidentiary basis for that?
Because as he now admits and as we now know, he hates President Trump and wanted him to lose that election. One can certainly reasonably presume that that was a similar motive for why he chose not to prosecute Hillary Clinton, even though she also had classified material at her home that was very, very carelessly kept on an unprotected. No, certainly reasonably presume that was and wanted him to lose that election. One can evidentiary basis that would have justified the opening of a criminal investigation by the FBI. Comey did it because, as he now admits and as we now know, he hates President Trump and wanted him to lose that election. One can certainly reasonably presume that that was a similar motive for why he chose not to prosecute Hillary Clinton, even though she also had classified material at her home that was very, very carelessly kept on an unprotected private email server that she had. Here from the New York Times, you see the headline, FBI Director James Comey.
I'm so curious. How can you... somebody said it in Kick Chat. How can you say Hillary Clinton was careless about her storage of emails on that server, but not make the exact same argument about Donald Trump? Or maybe he would make the same argument about Donald Trump, but he'd say, oh, but Hillary wasn't charged, even though the criminal intent part is...
Recommends no charges for Hillary Clinton on email. Quote, the FBI Director James B. Comey on Thursday recommended no criminal charges against Hillary Clinton for her handling of classified information while she was Secretary of State, lifting an enormous legal cloud from her presidential campaign less than 2 hours before she boarded Air Force One for her first joint campaign appearance with President Obama. What a gift. What a stroke of luck. On a day of high political drama in Washington, Mr. Comey rebuked Mrs. Clinton as being, quote, extremely careless in using a private email.
I wish I could go back in time. Even though no charges were recommended, I feel like Comey's review of Hillary didn't help her. I felt like it was a scathing review. Maybe I'm just misremembering the political climate at the time? I don't remember that feeling like a sigh of relief for her, but I don't know. Maybe I remember watching the announcement live.
Server, as using a private email address and server. He raised questions about her judgment, contradicted statements she had made about her email practices, said it was possible that hostile foreign governments had gained access to her account, and declared that a person still employed by the government, Mrs. Clinton left the State Department in 2013, could have faced disciplinary action for doing what she did. To warrant a criminal charge, Mr. Comey said, there had to be evidence that Mrs. Clinton intentionally transmitted or willfully mishandled classified information. The FBI found neither, and as a result, he said, quote, our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor could bring such a case. Earlier today, Hillary mocked this investigation. She promoted a hat that said, but her emails, which is a phrase used by liberal pundits to blame the media for Hillary Clinton's loss in 2016, saying that they excessively focused on this investigation, that it was no big deal, that she mishandled classified information, precisely because everybody knows that mishandling classified information is a joke. It's what people do in Washington every day. And not only do liberal pundits think she should be prosecuted for it, they were enraged that some media outlets, including New York Times, even reported on it and made it seem like it was a big deal. to the point where but her emails became an inside joke among liberal journalists, excuse the redundancy, because that was their way of saying, oh, Trump is this evil fascist and white supremacist, but her emails. In other words, the media was too even-handed in their coverage of the election by not only focusing on Trump's alleged wrongdoing with Russia, which turned out to be baseless, but on Hillary Clinton's mishandling of classified documents as well, because everyone views the mishandling of classified documents in Washington by powerful people as a joke. The only people who go to prison for that are low-level people who act with noble motives, like Edward Snowden or Julian Assange or Chelsea Manning. Powerful people.
Your motive doesn't matter here. It's the intention to willfully or intentionally...
who leak all the time get slapped on the wrist, like David Petraeus and Sandy Berger. And
slapped on the wrist, my dude? They were staring at the barrel of some pretty big charges, and they pled. Those were pleading. They pled guilty in those cases. Why are you comparing that to Donald Trump fighting all of these things to the death in court?
Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden.
And arguably for worse charges. Donald Trump's conduct was worse than Petraeus's. Donald Trump's conduct was inarguably worse than, Samuel Berger's or whatever the fuck.
Let us remember that Joe Biden has a very similar case where he was found to have
very similar case, bro.
Classified documents in all kinds of places where the law prohibits him from keeping these documents. Here from Business Insider in January of this year, quote, Biden suggests the classified documents found in his garage were safe because it was locked with his Corvette in there. That was his defense. Oh.
That defense? That wasn't a defense. That was a comment made to the media. There is no defense here because you haven't even proven a crime.
Corvette where I kept the classified documents. Obviously, I wouldn't keep my Corvette in an unsafe place. Quote, President Joe Biden confirmed Thursday that a second batch of classified documents was found in his garage, but suggested they were safe because the garage, which stored his Corvette, was locked. Do you think Mar-a-Lago was locked? At a White House press conference...
No, by definition! He didn't read the indictments. Because if he did, he would see that the indictment said that there were over 100,000 guests at over 150 social gatherings that were in areas where the documents were just sitting on a... There's even pictures there. Maybe the indictment should have been written in crayon?
Downplayed security concerns about the materials found at his house in Delaware. When a Fox News reporter asked what Biden was thinking by keeping documents in his garage next to his Corvette, Biden pushed back, quote, by the way, my Corvette's in a locked garage, okay, so it's not like they're sitting out on the street, he said. So the material was in a locked garage? Asked Fox News reporter Peter Doocy. Biden responded, quote, yes, as well as my Corvette. It kept it in his garage. On Thursday, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland appointed a special counsel to probe the matter, and the White House said it would cooperate with the investigation. The latest batch of classified documents being unearthed comes after a first batch of classified documents were discovered last fall at Biden's former private office at the Penn Biden Center in Washington. CNN reported the documents covered topics that included Ukraine, Iran, and the UK. It is currently unclear how many documents are in the batch and what they were about. Now, the distinction people make is that Biden returned the documents as soon as he was...
Oh my God, are we going to get to the criminal part? We're at 21 minutes. Do you think he's going to refer to a single thing in the indictment now at the very end of this video? Oh boy, here we go.
The distinction people make is that Biden returned the documents as soon as he was made aware that he had them, whereas Trump resisted returning them for several months, even when the archive and the Justice Department was asking for them back. But nobody thinks at this point that Joe Biden is going to be prosecuted, just like Hillary Clinton wasn't.
Why, Glenn?
For keeping classified information in exactly the way the law prohibits, in his garage, strewn about.
That's not what the law says.
Or in his private office. So what we're going to have is the Biden Justice Department prosecuting Donald Trump for mishandling classified information after the Obama Justice Department...
That's not even the only charge. Arguably, that's a minority of the charges. There's a ton of other things there related to obstruction, ordering other people to hide and mutilate, destroy things, knowingly telling lawyers and yourself, knowingly making false statements to the FBI in regards to subpoenas and other statements. No, like that's like a minority of what's even being asserted in the indictment.
Department refused to prosecute Hillary Clinton in the
Glenn Greenwald is a lawyer too. Never mind. I already said it plenty of times on stream. No offense to anybody. Being a lawyer doesn't mean anything. I'm sorry. I don't know if lawyers do this to each other. I'm about to start asking for, I need to know where you went. I need to know, were you in a tier 1 law school? What percentage of your class were you in? Like, I don't think being a lawyer means anything. I've heard some of the dumbest fucking statements of my life from people that are purportedly lawyers about anything. I don't know why, but lawyers will say, they'll just talk about the most random shit that they have no fucking idea about. I love them to death, okay? But even people that might have owned companies that I'm with have been on streams with me making crazy statements about copyright law. And I'm like, what the fuck are you saying? Holy shit. Yeah, Jesus. I believe he's a lawyer. I believe it.
For mishandling classified information. After the Obama Justice Department refused to prosecute Hillary Clinton in the middle of an election for doing the same, and almost certainly the Biden
and he went to, you know what? And my test wouldn't even work because he went to New York University, which I think is a tier 1 law school. Never mind then. All of you are fucking retarded, okay? I think NYU is tier 1, isn't it? Am I making that up? New York University, it is. Jesus.
Justice Department will protect Joe Biden and refuse to prosecute him as well, claiming he lacked the necessary intent. After the Obama Justice Department refused to prosecute Hillary Clinton in the middle of an election for doing the same, and after the Obama Justice Department prosecuting Donald Trump for mishandling classified information, after the Obama Justice Department refused to prosecute Hillary Clinton in the middle of an election.
If it was the Obama Justice Department and they were trying to do Hillary Clinton favors, why would they have investigated at all? If all of this was just a big joke and nobody took it seriously, why wouldn't Obama just tell his Justice Department, hey, drop the Hillary shit? Or go to Comey and be like, hey, she's chill, just leave. Like, if it's all rigged and it's all biased.
For doing the same, and almost certainly the Biden Justice Department will protect Joe Biden and refuse to prosecute him as well, claiming he lacked the necessary intent.
Because that's the thing that makes it a crime.
Now, there definitely are liberals who are desperate to put President Trump in prison. I don't think either of these charges, the one in Manhattan or the one just brought today, will do that, because I think the real goal of kind of the establishment writ large is not to...
It's to impugn Trump in the public. It's to win in the court of public opinion and make him look bad to voters.
Put President Trump in prison. They would love to see that, but the real goal is to prevent him from running in 2024, including by telling him, look, we have the power...
or to get him kicked off with all the lawsuits, I guess.
...to convict you. You have a Manhattan jury. You definitely took these documents. We have you on tape saying that you were aware the documents were still classified when you were talking to the people to whom you were showing them, which technically is a law. A grand jury, a jury will find that. We can put you in prison unless you agree that you won't run for president in 2024. And if you agree you won't run for president in 2024, we'll give you the same kind of slap on the wrist that we gave to David.
Notice that I love how people can just never... Okay, here's something that irritates me, all right? Here's something that irritates me, okay? You might be watching a movie, and it's like a realistic space travel movie, or it's supposed to be a realistic science fiction, or a realistic, like whatever. And there's like an airplane pilot in like a Boeing 747, like dodging and weaving and fighting enemy fighter jets, like doing crazy shit. Or you're watching some sci-fi movie and there's like a space shuttle that just like, flies all over the fucking solar system. And you're like, this is so not real. Like, this is not possible. Planes can't fly like this. Shuttles don't have this much fuel. Like, all this is stupid. None of this is realistic at all, right? This would be the most insane thing ever. And there are like 15 different things in this action movie that would be the most insane thing ever if they happen at any point in time, right? Now, it's a movie, obviously, so we let it slide, right? We're not doing a realistic evaluation of Mission Impossible. I don't know if these people understand that, like, what he is asserting right here, what Greenwald is asserting, that they're just doing these charges, these investigations, but if Trump agrees not to run again, they'll drop them. This would be the largest conspiracy in U.S. history, except maybe, I guess, like the Civil War. Does that count as a conspiracy to secede and fight against the United States? Like, this would be the largest conspiracy theory of all time that you're asserting with no evidence. This would be the biggest story nationally of all of U.S. history that this was happening.
Petraeus and Sandy Berger and Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, who weren't prosecuted at all.
And then I also wonder too, okay, because sometimes I worry, am I getting lazy? And I'm not. You guys just have unreasonable expectations how much streaming I should do.
Largest media corp,
right? Then I look at people like this. Your job is to do news. What the fuck does he do with all of his time in the day? What does he do all day? He doesn't read indictments, clearly. He's not getting more informed on any of these topics. He's reading some news articles, skimming news articles on screen and then putting out a video. Is that all he does? Is that their job? Like, I would expect, like, if this is your job, you're going to have some base level of information that is just going to dwarf anybody that's not immediately in this industry. Also, I like Trump indictment upends decades of lax classified docs, proceeds to refer to 2 cases. Like, has anybody ever been convicted of mishandling classified information? Well, actually, most of them probably take plea deals, huh? Glenn Greenwald, Trump indictments. New key indictment.
Now, let's look at the indictment itself. As I said, it was released only within the last hour before it became...
Let's look at the indictment itself. Does that mean he's going to look at the actual... Are we going to actually read some of it? Oh, my God, we are. Okay. Oh, boy. Okay.
So I'm not going to purport to do an in-depth dive into this indictment because that would be a disservice for me to do so without taking the necessary time. But I was able to discern a pretty good amount. I obviously read the indictment through twice. I was able to, based on my prior knowledge of what this indictment was likely to be, able to draw some conclusions that I think are based in some pretty confident and reliable facts. So let's look at what we do know. Here you see it. It is from the special prosecutor, Jack Smith, and it is filed in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia, which means if it goes to trial, it will be tried with a jury of residents of the District of Columbia, unlike the document case, the one alleging that Donald Trump harbored top secret documents at Mar-a-Lago, which would be tried before a Florida jury. They already had that other case in New York that will be tried before a Manhattan jury. So there's a very good chance Donald Trump will be convicted on one of these or more of these charges. And there's no guarantee this is the last one coming. As I said, liberals are really hoping for this sweeping indictment that accused Trump of being guilty of treason, basically, of being part of an insurrection, of inciting an insurrection. And it doesn't do that. It doesn't allege that he incited violence at the Capitol. It doesn't charge him with crimes pertaining to violence at the Capitol. Instead, it essentially says that the claims he made repeatedly, both in public and in the courts, that the election results of the byproduct of fraud in the election were false, that he knew them to be false, and that by conspiring with his lawyers like Rudy Giuliani and others, it names six, or it refers to six co-conspirators without naming them, although it seems clear we know who some of them are based on who meets the description, that it was a conspiracy to unlawfully obstruct the January 6th proceeding as well as the 2020 vote. Now, how that is a crime is a very difficult question to answer. So let me show you the key paragraphs of what I think are the key paragraphs of the indictment based on my preliminary read of it. So he's charged with 4 different counts. So you see it on the screen. Let's put the caption back on the screen. Count 1 is conspiracy to defraud the United States. Count 2 is conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. Count 3 is obstruction of and attempts to obstruct an official proceeding. And count 4 is a conspiracy against voting rights, meaning an attempt to deny the voting rights of other people by falsely claiming the election was fraudulent. Now, we covered on the show before, and it is very relevant to note that there have been 1,000 people criminally charged in connection with the January 6th riot. The vast majority of them are nonviolent, by which I do not mean that I believe they didn't engage in violence. What I mean by that is they're not alleged to have engaged in violence. They're alleged to have entered the Capitol, to have believed that
What does this have to do with literally anything?
the election was the byproduct of fraud, and yet many of them have been charged with felonies for nonviolent political protest. And there has always been a question, how is it that people, American citizens who are involved in nonviolent political protest, we've watched violent...
Well, go over some that you think are unfair. Give a few examples. First of all, why do you think a felony always has to be violent? That's a weird statement to make. There are plenty of non-violent felonies. Why not go over a few that you think are unfair? Give like 2.
Protests break out all throughout 2020. And members of the Democratic Party often raise money for their bail. And very few of them were actually charged with felonies or even misdemeanors unless they really... the Democratic violent political protest. We've watched violent protests break out all throughout 2020. And members of the Democratic Party often raise money for their bail. And very few of them were actually charged with felonies or even misdemeanors unless they really harmed somebody through violence. So
who was somebody that you think should have been charged that wasn't? Like,
the question is, how do you turn people who did not engage in violence, who are protesting an election, into criminals? And one of the ways they did that...
what do you mean, how do you turn them... Okay, sorry.
...in the District of Columbia was by using a law that was enacted after the Enron scandal involving this company that was apparently a huge success. Paul Krugman was on its board making $50,000 a month or so. And it turned out the whole thing was a Ponzi scheme. And they enacted a law called Sarbanes-Oxley after the Maryland Democratic Senator Paul Sarbanes that made it a crime to obstruct official proceedings because they were attempting to make it a felony for people to block legal investigations into financial fraud the way they did with Enron. And prosecutors in the January 6th case, the DOJ, took this proceeding and tried to say that they could use it to turn into felons people who were protesting at January 6th because they too have obstructed official proceedings. The problem with that was it was an extremely dubious interpretation because there's nothing about the January 6th proceeding that's actually a substantive proceeding. It's a purely ministerial act. And ironically, the prosecution, in order to argue that that was a felony, had to essentially say the January 6th proceeding at the Capitol was a real decision-making ceremony, that it was not just ceremonial or ministerial to just rubber stamp the certified voting results of the states, that the Senate really did have the right to reject the electorates if they had wanted, which ironically is the view of Trump and his lawyers that they were trying to get Mike Pence to adopt.
Well, hold on, but I believe they do have the ability to under the Election Certification Act. Was it the ECA? But I mean, like, typically you don't because you don't have a reason not to. But
nobody cared about the rights of the January 6th defendants. The Hugh Shaman was sentenced to over 4 years in prison.
Also, that wasn't what he was asking Pence to do. But
even though he wasn't accused at all of committing crimes, we saw what he did on January 6th. It wasn't anything remotely violent or threatening. Because the liberal establishment decided that this was one of the worst acts in American history. It was an insurrection. They were going to punish these people no matter what, regardless of legal niceties. And that's very similar to what this indictment seems to me to be. They're just so enraged that Trump claimed the 2020 election was the byproduct of fraud that they're determined come hell or high water to indict him and criminalize him for it, even though it's far from obvious.
I haven't even read all of these indictments yet. This is one we were going to do tomorrow or the day after. But no, that's literally not what they literally say right in the beginning, that he actually has the right to claim. The defendant had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and even to claim falsely that there had been outcome determinative fraud during the election that he had won. He was also entitled to formally challenge, like they literally say in the indictments that he's totally allowed to say that statement. He is going to read the indictment, right? Wait, will he?
And that's very similar to what this indictment seems to me to be. They're just so enraged that Trump claimed the 2020 election was the byproduct of fraud that they're determined come hell or high water to indict him and criminalize him for it, even...
Are any of these charges about his claim that it was fraudulent, or...
No, it's far from obvious even if you believe he did everything the indictment alleges, to know what crime was committed by doing so. So let's look at paragraph 3 of the indictment.
Oh, he hasn't read it. He had people read it and prepare it for him, and then they gave him the paragraphs to go through. That's what's going on here. Sorry. That's exactly what's happening. He's got somebody that does puts together shit for him or whatever.
And it is a paragraph that is intended
Oh, wait, never mind. He's literally pointing to the thing that I just referenced. Okay.
Say, we acknowledge Trump had the right to do certain things, and we want to make clear we are not prosecuting Trump for doing the things we acknowledge he had a right to do. Quote, the defendant had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election, and even to claim falsely that there had been outcome determinative fraud during the election and that he had won. So they're saying he was allowed to say, I'm the real winner of the 2020 election, there was fraud in this election that changed the results, even if what he was saying was false. He has that right. They acknowledge that. A free speech right. Quote, he was also entitled to formally challenge the results of the election through lawful and appropriate means, such as by seeking recounts or audits of the popular vote in states, or filing lawsuits challenging ballots and procedures. And of course, that's what Trump did as well. And they're acknowledging he had the right to do that, even if the claims on which those challenges and lawsuits are based were false. They go on, quote, indeed, in many cases, the defendant did pursue these methods of contesting the election results. His efforts to change the outcome in any state through recounts, audits, or legal challenges were uniformly unsuccessful. So the question becomes, if you acknowledge that Trump had the right to do all of those things, how is it that you're able to file 4 federal felony counts against him in connection with his allegation that the election was the byproduct of fraud? Here's what they say in paragraph 4, quote, shortly after election day, the defendant also pursued unlawful means of discounting legitimate votes and subverting the election results. In doing so, the defendant perpetrated 3 criminal conspiracies. Quote, A1, a conspiracy to defraud the United States by using dishonesty, fraud, and deceit to impair, obstruct, and defeat the lawful federal government function by which the results of the presidential election are collected, counted, and certified by the federal government in violation of 18 U.S.C. 371. Number 2, a conspiracy to corruptly obstruct and impede the January 6th congressional proceeding at which the collected results of the presidential election are counted and certified in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1512. And 3, a conspiracy against the right to vote and to have one's vote counted in violation of 18 U.S.C. 241. Now, if you spend your time reading this indictment as we did before the show, and again, I don't want to suggest I conducted an in-depth scholarly study of it because we didn't have the time to do that, but if you read it just on the first and second reading, you will see that there's very little substance to what they're claiming Trump did beyond the things they claim and acknowledge and concede he has the right to do, which is challenge the election, the results of the...
I mean, they would explain it in the indictment. I have to leave soon. Conspiracy to defraud the United States, dishonesty, fraud. So they named the co-conspirators. The defendant and co-conspirators used knowingly false claims of election fraud to get state legislators and election officials to subvert the legitimate election results and change electoral votes for the defendant's opponent, Joseph R. Biden Jr., to electoral votes for the defendant. That is, on the pretext of baseless fraud claims, the defendant pushed officials in certain states to ignore the popular vote, disenfranchise millions of voters, dismiss illegitimate or legitimate electors, and ultimately cause the ascertainment of and voting by illegitimate electors in favor of the defendant. This was the slate of false electors that were literally transmitted to Congress. It was fucking insane. The defendant and co-conspirators organized fraudulent... I'm sorry. The second part is this. This might just refer to... I wonder if this is referring to the phone calls and everything. I don't know. They're underlying evidence. I'm sorry. They mentioned what I just said in part B. The defendant and co-conspirators organized, or maybe this is all the same part of the thing or whatever, fraudulent slates of electors in 7 targeted states, attempting to mimic the procedures that the legitimate electors were supposed to follow under the Constitution and other federal and state laws. I'm so curious what the level of coordination was between Donald Trump and his lawyers and the fraudulent slates of electors. I am so curious what the level of coordination was. I don't even know. I haven't even read into that. This included causing the fraudulent electors to meet on the day appointed by federal law in which legitimate electors would gather inside their votes, cast fraudulent votes to the defendant, and sign certificates falsely representing that they were legitimate electors. Some fraudulent electors were tricked into participating based on the understanding that their votes would be used only if the defendant succeeded in outcome determinative lawsuits within their state, which the defendant never did. He lied to them again. If it's true. Remember, these are just indictments. So these are charges. They haven't been proven in court. This is just what the government believes they can prove in court, or what they're alleging, I should say. And they believe they can prove it, hence the indictment. The defendant and co-conspirators then caused these fraudulent electors to transmit their false certificates to the vice president and other government officials to be counted. sham election crime investigations and send a letter to the targeted states that falsely claimed the Justice Department had identified significant concerns that may have impacted the election outcome. They sought to advance the defendant's fraudulent elector plan by using the Justice Department's authority to falsely present the fraudulent electors as a valid alternative to the legitimate electors, and that urged, on behalf of the Justice Department, the targeted states legislators to convene the vice president to use the ceremonial role of the J6 certification proceedings to fraudulently alter the election results, first using knowingly false claims of election fraud. The defendant co-conspirators attempted to convince the vice president, that was the Pence thing, after became public on the afternoon of January 6th, the vice president would not fraudulently alter the election results. A large and angry crowd, including many individuals whom the defendant had deceived into believing the vice president could and might change the election results, violently attacked Capitol Hall to the proceeding. As violence ensued, the defendant and co-conspirators exploited the disruption by redoubling efforts to levy false claims of election fraud and convince members of Congress to further delay the certification based on these claims. They're going to have to prove this is a hard case, I think. I don't think that this is... hopefully not. Pisco's not here. I think this is going to be an incredibly difficult case to prove in court, and I can definitely see from a legal theory perspective, like even outside evidence and all that bullshit, from a legal theory perspective, this actually seems like it would be an incredibly difficult case. But I haven't even read through the full indictment, and obviously I don't know, Destiny, why? Because here's like the line you're trying to walk, which is a very thin line, is you have a right to challenge these things in court, but if your challenges are hella retarded, we're going to, criminally charge you. I'm exaggerating a bit, but like, that's a really, really tough line to walk. Now, it could be the case that they feel like they've got a plethora of evidence to support the fact that they know these charges are fake. For instance, Donald Trump saying like, I'm not saying this evidence exists, but Donald Trump saying like, I know that these charges are bullshit, but let's see if we can run them through the courts anyway, maybe try to get 1 or 2 wins, or if I at least start the criminal procedure or the civil challenges or whatever here, maybe we can go to the state legislatures and then, shout at them there. Like if you got like a ton of statements like this, I think you could probably prove it. But my guess would be like, just from a legal theory perspective, this is a super scary and probably really challenging case. The hope would be that for an indictment like this to come out, they have a lot of evidence. It would be hard if Trump's lawyers weren't cooperating already. That's kind of true too, though. If the problem is that if even a few of Trump's lawyers are cooperating, you might be able to have so much information. And my guess is going to be, here's what my guess is going to be. If you have Trump on record or people under him on record, and then Trump demonstrating understanding that knowingly false statements are being entered into court cases, and then those court cases are being used to argue or barter for other things, then maybe you build your case off of that. But I don't know. But probably a ton of, I'm sure there's a ton of, this is probably the third most difficult behind Georgia and Florida. The documents case is like open and shut. The documents case seems open and shut. Georgia, we have to read through. I need to read through the RICO thing. I don't know if I'll even go through the New York one. I don't fuck the New York one. His entire White House counsel are cooperating. Yeah. But anyway, okay, sorry.
The election by claiming it was the byproduct of fraud. They use a lot of accusatory words. A conspiracy to use unlawful means. They talk about the attempt to overturn the results in Washington, in Arizona, and Wisconsin. They talk about the pressure put on Mike Pence to reject the electorates presented at the January 6th hearing. But it's unclear within the scope of what they've conceded he has the right to do, any of that encompassed that went beyond what they acknowledge he had the legal right to do. He tried to overturn the Wisconsin and Arizona results through the lawful means of suing in court and trying to speak with people in those states to gather evidence that fraud was committed.
Careful. The pursuing the things through court is probably okay. The phone calls might not be. It super depends. I have no idea why he would say the phone calls were okay unless he's privy to all of that information that investigators have.
Arizona results through the lawful means of suing in court and trying to speak with people in those states to gather evidence that fraud was committed. And with regard to the attempt to convince Mike Pence to reject the electorates, he had lawyers telling him that those theories were valid.
Did he have multiple lawyers telling him? Also, I don't think that just having a lawyer tell you something lets you off the hook. Like, I'm so curious. If I want to do an illegal thing and I go and talk to 99 lawyers and they tell me it's wrong and I find one lawyer that tells me that it's right, am I able to do that illegal thing now, depending on if it's a state of mind crime or not? Like, would I really be able to make that argument? Would that really fly? I feel like it wouldn't, but what the fuck do I know?
That Pence had that power. They cite things that where Trump admitted, this seems kind of crazy, but that's hardly a proof that you know you're engaging in fraud. That seems kind of crazy, but it seems like the lawyers are right.
Wait, does Trump say that? Hold on. That seems kind of crazy. I wonder if that is in the indictment. Why would you not refer to parts of the indictment? Why not just say that? Why not like actually... Crazy doesn't show. Okay, we'll try Pence. He's news. He's a journalist. Why wouldn't you like go through the actual... Can I not control F this fucking document? Oh, a lot of these claims do come from the January 6th Commission. Remember reading these? The defendant insinuated that more than 10,000 dead voters had voted in Georgia. Just 4 days earlier, Georgia's Secretary of State had explained to the defendant that this was false. This is stuff that was covered in the executive summary of this. Remember this section? Where they go over like all of the knowingly false statements in the Trump. So apparently a lot of the research in this and a lot of the investigations, everything did end up being utilized by the, I guess it would be DOJ for these indictments. The defendant said that more than 30,000 non-citizens had voted in Arizona. The defendant's own campaign manager had explained to him that such claims were false, and the Speaker of the Arizona House of Representatives, who had supported the defendant in this election, had issued a public statement. There's no evidence. So the voting machines, okay, blah, 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 okay. No, you can't use reliance of counsel in good faith. Secondly, Trump has not filed an affirmative reliance defense as of yet. If he does, he then waives attorney-client privilege. Oh, is that true? So you're saying that I can't commit a crime and then use reliance of counsel as a defense, but if I wanted to do that, that would be an affirmative defense where I'd have to essentially admit the crime, but then affirmatively say that, well, it's because of this. But then that means that, well, hold on. Do you have attorney-client privilege if you're being accused of crimes? If the attorneys are like co-conspirators? There's no way you do, right? I don't think you'd have attorney-client privilege anyway, right? You would just, that would all be, I think that would all come out of discovery. That'd be my guess. I don't know. Like if I was conspiring with another guy to go and rob a store, rob a bank, but he was like my attorney, I don't think I could invoke attorney-client privilege and then have that be immune from discovery in any criminal proceeding. But that's just a guess, huh? Shortly after election day, okay. I'm so curious what they say about the deceit to get state officials to subvert. Do you think these lawsuits will be private or public to watch? They've got to be public, right? It's a public trial. Why would these be private? That would be so weird. Privately trying an ex-president, somebody running for president, it has to be public. That'd be my guess, right? Federal court will not be broadcast, really? If it's not broadcast, there must at least be like full transcriptions or something made available, right? Destin, you can use it, but you have to tell the prosecutors that you and the judges get to review if it's in good faith. Federal court, people are saying federal court can't be broadcast. Oh, well, never mind, damn.